The stars looked different from the observation deck of Earth's orbital station. Commander John Allen had studied astronomy his whole life, but today, the familiar patterns seemed to hold new meaning. Somewhere out there, alien ships were approaching. "They're making their final approach, sir," said Captain Lisa Brooks, her voice steady despite the tension that filled the room. "The Altarian delegation will dock in 10 minutes. John nodded, straightening his uniform. Humanity's first official contact with an alien civilization would be recorded in history books forever. He hoped it would be remembered for the right reasons. "Is President Powell ready for the transmission?" he asked. "Yes, sir. She'll speak from the United Earth headquarters once we've established initial communication." The room fell silent as they watched the massive Altarian ship maneuver toward the docking station. It dwarfed Earth's largest vessel, its sleek purple hull reflecting the sun's light in ways that made it seem almost alive. Beside John, Dr. Kate Russell whispered, "Their technology is at least 2 centuries ahead of ours." 3 months ago, the Yen long-range sensors had detected the Altarian fleet entering the solar system. Instead of attacking, they had sent a message. They wished to meet with Earth's leaders. The message included enough of Earth's languages to make their intentions clear. The Altarians had been watching humanity for some time. The airlock cycled open with a hiss. John stepped forward, his hand extended in greeting as 3 figures entered the station. The Altarians were tall and slender with grayish-blue skin that seemed to shimmer under the lights. Their forearms moved with precise grace, and their large pupilless eyes assessed the humans with an unsettling intensity. "Welcome to Earth's orbital station," John said. "I am Commander John Allen of the Earth Defense Fleet representing the United Earth Government." The tallest Altarian stepped forward. "I am Ambassador Zixral of the Altarian Galactic Empire, rulers of 300 star systems across this arm of the galaxy." The words came from a small device on the ambassador's chest, translating with only a slight delay. "With me are Science Director Peltarn and Admiral Vexmore." John noticed how Admiral Vexmore's hand remained close to what looked like a weapon at his side. The Admiral's eyes narrowed as he studied the humans, his mouth set in what John interpreted as contempt. "We are honored by your visit," John continued. "President Powell wishes to speak with you directly." A screen on the wall activated, showing the face of President Samantha Powell. Her expression was calm and diplomatic, though John knew she must be as nervous as the rest of them. "Ambassador Zixral, on behalf of humanity, I extend our hand, in friendship. We hope this meeting marks the beginning of peaceful relations between our peoples." The ambassador tilted his head. "Your optimism is noted, President Powell. The Altarian Empire has existed for 3,000 years. In that time, we have encountered 47 intelligent species. All now exist harmoniously within our empire." The emphasis on the word "within" wasn't lost on John. He exchanged a quick glance with Lisa, who shifted uncomfortably. "We would be pleased to discuss cultural exchange and trade agreements," President Powell said carefully. Ambassador Zixral made a gesture that might have been amusement. "Of course. But first, we must address your status within the Empire. The standard integration process is quite painless. Your world will be assigned a governor, and appropriate tribute levels will be established based on your resources." A heavy silence filled the room. John felt his heart sink as he realized this wasn't a diplomatic meeting at all. It was the prelude to an ultimatum. President Powell's voice remained steady. "Ambassador, perhaps there's been a misunderstanding. Earth is an independent world. We're eager to establish friendly relations with the Altarian Empire as equals, not as subjects." Admiral Vexmore stepped forward, his voice harsh even through the translator. "There is no misunderstanding. You will join the Empire willingly and maintain your limited autonomy, or you will be conquered. The choice is yours, but the outcome is inevitable." Dr. Russell stepped forward. "Surely there's room for negotiation. Our species has much to offer through peaceful exchange." Science Director Peltarn spoke for the first time, his voice softer than the others. "We have studied your biology and technology. Your species is limited by your short lifespans and inefficient thought processes. While your adaptability is somewhat remarkable, You have nothing that would benefit the Empire beyond your planet's resources. I must insist, President Powell began, but Admiral Vexmore cut her off. You have 7 Earth days to prepare your surrender documents. We will return then to begin the integration process. He turned to leave, but Ambassador Zixral raised a hand to stop him. What the Admiral means is that we hope you will consider our offer carefully. The benefits of Imperial protection are substantial. The ambassador's tone was smoother, but his meaning was no different. The meeting ended abruptly. As the Altarians returned to their ship, John gathered his officers in the secure briefing room. They're not here to make friends, Lisa said, stating what everyone already knew. No, they're not, John agreed. And they've just made their first mistake. They've underestimated us. Over the next 3 days, strange objects appeared in orbit around Earth. Captain Lisa Brooks and her team captured images of Altarian ships placing what appeared to be weapons platforms at strategic points. They're preparing for our refusal, John told President Powell during an emergency meeting. These platforms could target major cities across the globe. President Powell looked tired, the weight of Earth's future heavy on her shoulders. What? Are our options, Commander? Limited, Madam President. Their technology outmatches ours significantly. But they've made assumptions about us, dangerous ones. Major Frank Carter, head of Special Operations, leaned forward. They think we'll surrender to save lives. They don't understand that humans fight hardest when backed into a corner. Then we'll show them, President Powell said. Prepare the fleet. Open communications with the Mars and Luna colonies. If the Altarians want war, we'll give them one they won't forget. On the 7th day, the Altarian flagship returned. This time there was no diplomatic reception. Your decision? Admiral Vexmore demanded through the communication channel. President Powell stood tall as she delivered Earth's answer. The people of Earth reject your terms. We will not surrender our freedom. We propose instead a treaty of mutual respect and non-aggression. Admiral Vexmore's face showed no surprise, only cold determination. Then you have chosen the difficult path. Remember this moment, humans. Remember that you brought this upon yourselves. The communication ended. Within hours, the Altarian fleet moved into attack position. The first shots of the war were fired not at Earth, but at the Mars colony. 5,000 civilians died in what the Altarians called a demonstration of resolve. As Earth's defenses scrambled to respond, Commander John Allen looked out at the stars once more. They still seemed different, but now he understood why. Those distant lights no longer represented mystery and wonder alone. They had become a battlefield. The war for humanity's future had begun, and the Altarian Empire was about to learn just how costly their mistake would be. The attack on Mars colony changed everything. Earth's military bases buzzed with activity as soldiers prepared for war. In the 3 weeks since the attack, humanity had shifted to a war footing with remarkable speed. Major Frank Carter wiped sweat from his brow as he examined the fleet of retrofitted mining vessels. They weren't pretty, but they were fast and agile. The ships had been stripped down and rebuilt with weapon systems that shouldn't work together, but somehow did. Will they hold up in a fight? Asked Dr. Kate Russell, who had joined him on the inspection. Frank patted the hull of the nearest ship. They're not meant to win in a direct battle. These are hit-and-run vessels. Strike fast, then disappear. On the main view screen of Earth Defense Headquarters, Commander John Allen watched the Altarian fleet's movements. Their massive battle cruisers had formed a blockade around Earth's orbital paths. They clearly expected humanity to either surrender or launch a direct assault against their superior firepower. They were wrong on both counts. Status on Operation Hornet's Nest? John asked Captain Lisa Brooks, who stood beside him. All ships are in position, sir. Major Carter's team is ready to move on your command. John nodded. And Dr. Russell's new shielding technology? Installed on all lead vessels. It's untested, in combat, but the simulations are promising. John took a deep breath. What they were about to attempt went against conventional military wisdom. Instead of matching the Altarians' massive ships, they would deploy hundreds of small, fast vessels in swarm formations. The strategy relied on speed and unpredictability rather than firepower. "Give the order," John said. "Begin Operation Hornet's Nest." Across the solar system, Earth's hidden fleet sprang into action. Mining ships modified for combat emerged from hiding places in asteroid fields. Research vessels equipped with experimental weapons systems appeared from behind moons. Even civilian transport ships played their part, creating distractions and false readings on Altarian sensors. From his command ship, Admiral Vexmore watched in confusion as his tactical display lit up with hundreds of small enemy vessels approaching. "From all directions, what is this?" he demanded of his officers. Their fleet wasn't this large in our intelligence reports. On the bridge of the Earthship Swift, Major Frank Carter grinned as he led his squadron toward an Altarian supply convoy. "Remember the plan," he told his pilots. "Target their engines and communication arrays, then get out fast. Don't stick around to admire your work." The small Earthships darted between the massive Altarian cruisers, firing precisely at vulnerable points before disappearing again. The Altarians' superior weapons were useless if they couldn't get a lock on their targets. In the Lunar Defense Laboratory, Dr. Kate Russell monitored data streams from the battle. Each time an Altarian weapon struck an Earthship equipped with her adaptive shielding, the system recorded the energy signature and adjusted to resist it better next time. "It's working," she whispered as the data confirmed her theories. "The shields are learning." On Earth, President Samantha Powell addressed the United Earth Council. "The war has begun, but not on the Altarians' terms. Commander Allen's strategy gives us a fighting chance, but we must prepare for a long conflict." The council chamber was silent as satellite images showed the battle raging in space. Everyone understood what was at stake, not just their freedom, but their very existence as a species. Back in space, the battle around Jupiter's moon Europa reached its peak. 3 Altarian dreadnoughts had cornered a group of Earth vessels against the moon's gravity well. What should have been a slaughter turned into a stunning victory for the humans. Captain Lisa Brooks led the trapped ships in a maneuver that used Europa's gravity to slingshot them around the moon at incredible speed. As they curved around, they launched a coordinated attack on the dreadnought's blind spots. "Fire everything now," Lisa ordered. The combined firepower of the small vessels focused on the same weak points, overwhelming the dreadnought's shields. One by one, the massive Altarian ships lost power and drifted helplessly. Admiral Vexmore received the news of the defeat with cold fury. "Impossible. These primitives cannot defeat Altarian dreadnoughts." Science Director Peltarn studied the battle data with growing concern. "Admiral, these humans are not fighting according to any known tactical doctrine. They're adapting their strategies in real time." "It doesn't matter," the Admiral snapped. "They are still inferior. Their victory is a temporary setback. Nothing more." In the Altarian High Council chamber, thousands of light years away, news of the battle reached Ambassador Zix Ral and the other council members. Council member Kenthal, older and wiser than most, shook his head. "We may have misjudged these humans. Their technology is indeed primitive, but their adaptability is remarkable." "Nonsense," said another council member. "They are simply fighting desperately. Once they realize resistance is futile, they will surrender like all others before them." Kenthal wasn't convinced. "We should study their psychology more carefully. There may be aspects of their species we have failed to account for." Back on Earth, Lieutenant Steve Martinez led a small team on a daring mission. While the main battle distracted the Altarians, his specialized unit boarded an isolated Altarian scout ship. "Move fast," Steve told his team as they cut through the outer hull. "We have 15 minutes before they realize we're here." Inside the alien vessel, the human team worked quickly, downloading data and collecting technology samples. What they found would change the course of the war. 6 hours later, in Earth Defense Headquarters, Commander John Allen reviewed Lieutenant Martinez's findings with growing excitement. "The Altarians' entire command structure is rigidly hierarchical," John explained to President Powell. "Their ships cannot take independent action without orders from superiors. It's why our swarm tactics are so effective. They can't adapt quickly. Enough." Dr. Amy Peterson, The military psychologist assigned to analyze the Altarian communications added another crucial insight. Their society values order above all else. Chaos and unpredictability are not just tactical challenges for them, they're psychologically disturbing. President Powell understood immediately. Then we'll give them chaos. Over the next days, Earth forces began broadcasting contradictory orders on Altarian frequencies, creating confusion in their chain of command. Ships received orders to advance and retreat simultaneously. Supply vessels were redirected to empty space. On the Altarian command ship, Admiral Vexmore struggled to restore order. How are they intercepting our secure communications? This is impossible. As the first month of war came to a close, the Altarian Empire faced an uncomfortable truth. What should have been a simple subjugation had become a genuine war, and the humans were winning. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Altarian Galactic Empire faced an enemy who refused to follow the rules of war as they understood them. And this was only the beginning. 3 months into the war, the Altarian High Council called an emergency meeting. Ambassador Zix Ryal stood before the gathered leaders, his normal confidence replaced by visible concern. The human resistance continues to grow stronger, he reported. They are not following the expected pattern of a species facing superior technology. Council member Ken Thal, who had warned about underestimating the humans from the beginning, leaned forward. Tell us what you have observed about their behavior that troubles you most. They rebuild destroyed infrastructure within days. Their weapon systems adapt overnight. Most disturbing of all, their tactics change constantly, Zixral explained. No two human commanders fight the same way. Admiral Vexmore, who had been summoned back from the front lines to explain the lack of progress, dismissed these concerns. They are merely delaying the inevitable. I have requested additional ships. Once they arrive, we will crush this resistance once and for all. Kenthal shook his head slowly. I have studied the reports from our intelligence units. These humans do not think like us. Their chaotic approach to warfare gives them an advantage we did not anticipate. What do you suggest? Asked the Altarian Emperor, speaking for the first time. We must understand their psychology before we can defeat them, Kenthal answered. Brute force alone will not work against this species. Admiral Vexmore's face darkened with anger. Respectfully, I disagree. More force is exactly what is needed. These primitives cannot stand against our full might. The Emperor considered both views. You will have your additional ships, Admiral, but I expect results. Back on Earth, Dr. Amy Peterson worked tirelessly to understand the Altarian mind. The military psychologist had been studying intercepted communications and the behavior patterns of captured Altarian officers. Their greatest strength is also their greatest weakness, she explained to Commander John Allen and President Powell during a strategy meeting. The Altarians value order and hierarchy above all else. Their entire society is built on clear chains of command, and that's why our chaotic approach confuses them, John concluded. Exactly, Amy agreed. But there's more. They genuinely believe their way is superior, not just militarily, but morally. They see themselves as bringing order to a chaotic galaxy. President Powell considered this information. Can we use this against them? We already are, Amy said. Every time we recover from an attack faster than they expect, every time we adapt to their weapons when we shouldn't be able to, it doesn't just defeat them tactically, it challenges their entire worldview. On the front lines, Major Frank Carter put these insights into practice. His fleet of small, agile ships never attacked the same way twice. Sometimes they would charge directly at Altarian vessels. Other times they would hide in asteroid fields and ambush supply ships. Keep them guessing, Frank told his pilots. If they can't predict what we'll do next, they can't effectively counter us. Lieutenant Steve Martinez had continued his special operations, leading his team on increasingly bold missions. They had now captured 3 Altarian vessels intact, providing invaluable intelligence and technology. Their ships are actually less advanced than we thought in some ways, Steve reported after their latest mission. They haven't needed to innovate much in hundreds of years. No one has challenged them. Dr. Kate Russell and her team at the Lunar Defense Laboratory worked around the clock, reverse engineering Altarian technology. What they discovered surprised everyone. Their base technology isn't that different from ours, Kate explained during a briefing. It's just more refined after thousands of years of development. But the principles are similar enough that we can adapt it, and in some cases, improve it. This was proven true when Kate unveiled a new shield system that combined Altarian energy manipulation with human creativity. The shields could now redirect enemy fire rather than just absorbing it, turning the Altarians' own weapons against them. As the war entered its 6th month, a new development shifted the balance further. A message arrived through an encrypted channel that no human had created. Captain Lisa Brooks was the first to detect it. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission on an unknown frequency. It's not Altarian, at least not any Altarian code we've seen before." The message came from a species called the Nubarians, who had been under Altarian rule for over 400 years. They had been watching the human resistance with growing interest. "Your people fight like none we have seen before," the Nubarian message stated. "We wish to help. We have information about Altarian weaknesses that may be useful to you." This first contact led to a secret meeting between human representatives and Nubarian rebels. Captain Susan Grant led the diplomatic mission, traveling to a remote moon at the edge of the solar system. The Nubarians were shorter than humans, with tough gray skin and 4 eyes that blinked in sequence rather than together. Despite their alien appearance, Susan immediately recognized the emotion in their stance: hope. "For centuries, we accepted Altarian rule as inevitable," explained Kolvek, the Nubarian leader. "No species had ever successfully resisted them. Until you." Susan was careful not to promise too much. "We're fighting for our freedom, but the war is far from won." "But you have already accomplished what no one else has," Kolvek insisted. "You have shown that the Empire is not invincible. Other subjugated species are watching. Some are beginning to question." The Nubarians provided detailed information about Altarian fleet movements and supply routes. More importantly, they shared knowledge about other species under Altarian control who might be willing to help the human cause. When Susan returned to Earth with this information, it changed the nature of the war. What had been a fight for survival became something more: a potential revolution against an empire that had gone unchallenged for too long. In the Altarian command ship, Admiral Vexmore faced increasing pressure from his superiors. The reinforcements had arrived: 50 additional warships, the largest fleet deployment in centuries. Yet the humans continued to elude total defeat. Even worse, reports were coming in of unrest in other parts of the Empire. Species that had been obedient for generations were suddenly causing problems, inspired by stories of human resistance that had somehow spread despite communication blocks. "The humans must be made an example of," Vexmore told his officers. "We will unleash our full power against their home planet. Once Earth falls, these rebellious thoughts will fade." What the Admiral didn't understand, what the entire Altarian Empire failed to grasp, was that humans didn't follow the expected pattern of a species facing extinction. Instead of becoming more cautious as the danger increased, they became more daring. Instead of hoarding their resources, they innovated with what they had, and now they were no longer fighting alone. As 6 more Altarian warships fell to seemingly impossible tactics, Admiral Vexmore received a message from the Emperor himself: "Explain your failures or be replaced." For the first time, the Admiral felt something unfamiliar: doubt. Could the mighty Altarian Empire have made a mistake in challenging these humans? 1 year into the war, the Altarian Empire committed half its fleet to crushing human resistance. Admiral Vexmore had convinced the Emperor that overwhelming force was the only solution. Massive battleships entered the solar system, their weapons capable of destroying entire cities from orbit. "This is the largest military deployment in Imperial history," Science Director Peltar noted as he viewed the fleet from the command ship. "All to subdue one species on one planet." Admiral Vexmore didn't respond. His career Perhaps his life depended on victory. The failure to quickly conquer Earth had embarrassed him before the Emperor. Now he would end this conflict, whatever the cost. On Earth, Commander John Allen studied the incoming Altarian fleet with grim determination. "They're bringing everything they have," he told President Powell. "This will be the hardest fight yet." President Powell had aged visibly during the war year. Once black hair now showed streaks of gray, and lines had deepened around her eyes. Yet her resolve remained unbroken. "What options do we have?" she asked. "A direct confrontation would be suicide," John admitted. "But Colonel Morgan has proposed a plan that might give us an edge." Colonel Jack Morgan was known for strategies that bordered on the insane. The tall, quiet officer had earned a reputation for achieving the impossible. Now he proposed the most daring mission of the war. "We can't defeat their fleet," Jack explained as he outlined his plan to the War Council. "But we don't need to. We just need their battle plans." His proposal was audacious. Lead a small team in a captured Altarian scout ship directly to the enemy command vessel, infiltrate it using stolen access codes provided by the Nubarians, and capture the strategic battle plans for the upcoming assault. "This is incredibly risky," Captain Lisa Brooks pointed out. "The chances of success are minimal." "Which is exactly why they won't expect it," Jack replied with a slight smile. 3 days later, Colonel Morgan and a team of 5 specialists departed in a captured Altarian scout ship. They wore modified Altarian environmental suits, altered by Dr. Kate Russell to accommodate human physiology while maintaining the appearance of Altarian armor. "Remember, you'll have approximately 4 hours before the life support in those suits begins to fail," Kate warned them before they left. "The adjustments are temporary at best," Jack nodded. 4 hours will be enough." Their small ship approached the massive Altarian command vessel, transmitting the stolen access codes. Tense minutes passed as they waited for either clearance or destruction. "Access granted," the Altarian automated system finally responded. "Proceed to Docking Bay 7. On the bridge of his command ship, Admiral Vexmore was finalizing the assault plans when an aide approached him. "Admiral, Scout Ship Zenith 459 has returned from its reconnaissance mission and requests permission to dock." The Admiral barely looked up from his displays. "Tell them to file their report through the proper channels. I have more important matters to attend to." Down in the docking bay, Jack and his team moved quickly and quietly through the massive ship. The stolen Nubarian intelligence proved accurate. The ship's layout matched their data perfectly. "Central Data Core should be 2 levels up," whispered Lieutenant Steve Martinez, who had memorized the ship's layout. "Security will be heaviest there." The team used service corridors and maintenance shafts to avoid regular patrols. When confrontation couldn't be avoided, they used non-lethal methods to subdue Altarian crew members. "We need to be ghosts," Jack had instructed them. "The longer they don't know we're here, the better our chances." Back on Earth, tension mounted as hours passed with no word from Colonel Morgan's team. President Powell paced the Situation Room, stopping occasionally to stare at the silent communication display. "They should have reported in by now," she said, voicing everyone's concern. "The Altarian command ship's shielding would block any transmission," Commander Allen reminded her. "We won't hear from them until they're clear, if they make it clear." On the Altarian vessel, Jack's team finally reached the Central Data Core, a massive room filled with crystalline storage structures that pulsed with light. 30 minutes before the suits fail," Steve warned, checking the life support readings. Jack nodded and connected a human-modified data device to the Altarian system. Dr. Russell had designed it to interface with Altarian technology and download massive amounts of data quickly. "Downloading now," Jack confirmed. Estimated completion time 12 minutes. The team formed a defensive perimeter while the download proceeded. So far they had been incredibly lucky. No alarms had sounded. No one had discovered the unconscious crew members they'd left behind. Their luck didn't last. An Altarian security officer entered the data core for a routine check. He immediately spotted the intruders and reached for his weapon. Steve reacted, first firing a stun weapon. The officer dropped, but not before triggering his emergency signal. Alarms blared throughout the ship. Admiral Vexmore was immediately alerted to the security breach. "Intruders in the data core?" he demanded. "How is that possible?" Back in the data core, Jack checked the download progress. 80% complete. We need 3 more minutes. "We don't have 3 minutes," Steve responded as the sound of approaching security forces echoed down the corridor. Jack made a quick decision. "Everyone go. Take what we have and get back to the ship. I'll hold them off and complete the download." His team wanted to argue, but they knew the mission came first. One by one, they slipped out through a maintenance tunnel, while Jack positioned himself at the entrance. The first wave of Altarian security forces arrived just as the download completed. Jack grabbed the data device and fired a series of stun blasts, creating confusion. Then he threw a smoke grenade, another of Dr. Russell's adaptations of Altarian technology. Under cover of the dense smoke, Jack escaped through the same maintenance tunnel his team had used. By the time he reached the docking bay, his environmental suit was beginning to fail, its life support system sputtering. "Cutting it close, Colonel," Steve said as Jack stumbled into the stolen scout ship, gasping for breath. They launched immediately, using the codes they'd intercepted to open the bay doors. Altarian fighters scrambled to pursue them, but the small scout ship was surprisingly fast. "Did we get everything?" Jack asked once his breathing steadied. Steve checked the data device. "We got it all, sir. Complete battle plans for the assault on Earth, plus something unexpected. Internal communications about growing unrest throughout the Empire." 3 hours later, the scout ship returned to Earth. The data they'd captured was more valuable than anyone had anticipated. Not only did it reveal the Altarians' planned attack vectors, but it also contained information about thinly defended supply lines and communication relays. "This changes everything," Commander Allen said as he reviewed the stolen plans. "With this information, we can hit them where they're weakest." But perhaps the most important discovery was the evidence of other rebellions starting across the Altarian Empire. The Nubarians weren't the only species inspired by human resistance. A dozen other subjugated worlds had begun to question their Altarian overlords. "We're not just fighting for ourselves anymore," President Powell realized. "We're becoming a symbol for freedom throughout the galaxy." In his command ship, Admiral Vexmore faced the most difficult communication of his career, reporting to the Emperor that humans had successfully infiltrated his flagship and stolen critical military intelligence. "This is unprecedented," the Emperor's holographic image said coldly. "No species has ever dared such an action against our fleet. I take full responsibility for this security failure," Admiral Vexmore said, knowing the potential consequences of such an admission. The Emperor studied him for a long moment. Perhaps Council Member Kenthal was right. These humans are unlike any species we have encountered before. They may require a different approach. For the first time in the war, the mighty Altarian Empire began to consider alternatives to total victory. 3 years had passed since the Altarians first entered Earth's solar system. What they had planned as a quick conquest had become the longest conflict in Imperial history. Now, after countless battles across the solar system and beyond, the unthinkable was happening. The Altarian Empire had requested peace talks. "It's a trap," warned Major Frank Carter during the emergency council meeting on Earth. "They've tried to trick us before." President Samantha Powell, her hair now completely gray from the stress of leading humanity through the war, considered his words carefully. "Perhaps, but our intelligence suggests they're facing serious problems throughout their empire." This was true. Thanks to the alliance with the Nubarians and other former Altarian subjects, humans had learned that rebellions had broken out on 27 worlds. The mighty Altarian fleet was stretched thin, trying to maintain control of their vast territory while still fighting humans. "We should at least hear what they have to say," suggested Commander John Allen. "But we go in prepared for anything." The peace conference was set on a neutral space station at the edge of the solar system. Both sides agreed to bring only minimal security forces. Captain Susan Grant, who had proven herself a skilled diplomat in dealing with alien allies, would lead the human delegation alongside President Powell. As the Earth ship approached the meeting point, Susan studied the station through the view screen. Strange to think this might be where the war finally ends. President Powell nodded. If it ends. Stay alert, Captain. This could still go either way. Inside the station, the human delegation came face to face with their Altarian counterparts. Ambassador Zixral was there, as was Science Director Peltarn. Notably absent was Admiral Vexmore, who had been recalled to the Altarian homeworld months earlier. President Powell, Ambassador Zixral began, his translator device giving his words a mechanical tone. On behalf of the Altarian Empire, I welcome you to these historic discussions. The talks began carefully, with neither side fully trusting the other. The Altarians proposed a ceasefire and the withdrawal of their remaining forces from the solar system. In return, they wanted humans to stay within their own system and not interfere with Altarian affairs elsewhere. This is not peace, President Powell pointed out. This is simply a pause before you rebuild your forces and return. Ambassador Zixral's expression remained unreadable. We have no intention of returning to this conflict. The Empire has reconsidered its approach to your species. Why? Susan asked directly. What changed? It was Science Director Peltarn who answered. You did not behave as expected. Other species we encountered either surrendered quickly or fought conventionally and lost. Humans did neither. This was the closest any Altarian had come to admitting. They had misjudged humanity. President Powell decided to press the advantage. If we agree to peace, it must be as equals, she insisted, not as potential subjects waiting for your return. The negotiations continued for days. Back on Earth, Dr. Kate Russell worked with her team to prepare a demonstration that might strengthen the human position. When she was ready, she contacted President Powell. It's time, was all she said. The next day, during a critical session of the peace talks, President Powell requested permission to bring in a special advisor. When granted, Dr. Russell entered the room carrying what appeared to be an Altarian communication device. Without explanation, she activated it. A holographic display appeared, showing technical specifications that the Altarians recognized immediately as their own advanced ship designs. This is classified Imperial technology, Ambassador Zixral said, his voice sharp with surprise. How did you obtain this? We didn't obtain it, Dr. Russell explained calmly. We improved it. She adjusted the device, and the hologram changed to show a new design, clearly based on Altarian technology but modified in ways that even Science Director Peltarn couldn't immediately understand. Impossible, he whispered, studying the designs. These modifications would increase efficiency by at least 30%. 42% actually, Dr. Russell corrected him. We've been studying your technology for 3 years now. You gave us quite an education. The implications were clear. Even if the Altarians withdrew now and returned years later, they would face a humanity that had not only mastered their technology, but improved upon it. Ambassador Zixral conferred privately with his delegation before returning to the table with a new proposal. The Empire offers full recognition of human independence and non-interference in perpetuity. In exchange, we propose an exchange of knowledge and cultural understanding. President Powell studied the ambassador carefully. And what about the other species in your empire? The ones who have been inspired by our resistance? This was the true heart of the matter. The ambassador hesitated before answering. Internal imperial affairs are not part of these negotiations. They are now, President Powell stated firmly. True peace means freedom, not just for humans, but for all beings to determine their own path. The talks nearly collapsed at this point. The Altarian delegation withdrew to consult with the Emperor. Hours passed with no word. Finally, Ambassador Zixral returned alone. He looked tired, his normally perfect posture slightly bent. I have been authorized to make a final proposal, he said. The Empire will establish a new Galactic Congress where representatives from all worlds within our sphere will have a voice in governance. It is unprecedented, but the Emperor has been convinced that the old ways are no longer sustainable. President Powell exchanged glances with her team. This was more than they had dared hope for. Not just freedom for Earth, but a fundamental change in how the Altarians interacted with other species. "We accept this proposal in principle," she said carefully, "but the details will need to be worked out to ensure fair representation for all." That evening, as the human delegation prepared to return to their ship for the night, Ambassador Zix Ral approached Susan Grant privately. "May I speak frankly, Captain?" he asked. Susan nodded, curious. "In my 3,000 years, I have never seen anything like what your species has accomplished," the ambassador admitted. "You forced an empire that has existed for millennia to change its fundamental nature." "We just wanted to survive," Susan replied. "No," Zixral said. "Other species wanted to survive. Humans wanted to thrive. That is the difference." He paused before adding, "The Emperor asked me to determine where we went wrong with humans. Do you know what my conclusion was?" Susan waited for him to continue. "Our biggest mistake wasn't attacking Earth," the ambassador said. "It was failing to recognize you as worthy allies from the beginning. The galaxy would have been very different if we had approached humans with respect rather than conquest." 1 month later, the formal peace treaty was signed on Earth, broadcast to every human settlement in the solar system and to all worlds in the Altarian Empire. It marked not just the end of a war, but the beginning of a new era. As President Powell signed the document, she looked across at Ambassador Zix Ral. "This could have been avoided, you know. All you had to do was ask nicely the first time." For the first time in their interactions, the ambassador made a sound that the translator identified as laughter. "Perhaps the next time we discover an unknown species, we will remember the lesson humans taught us." On the observation deck of Earth's orbital station, Commander John Allen stood with Dr. Kate Russell, watching the Altarian diplomatic ships depart. "Do you think it will last?" Kate asked, looking at the stars. "This peace?" John considered the question before answering. "I think they'd be fools to test us again. And whatever else the Altarians are, they're not fools." As the last Altarian ship disappeared into the distance, John couldn't help but smile. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge and emerged not just victorious, but transformed. The stars no longer represented a threat, but an invitation, a galaxy of possibilities waiting to be explored. And this time, they would go as equals, not as conquerors or conquered. That, perhaps, was the greatest victory of all.